How are we doing? Okay, so this is a pretty in-depth topic, but I'll try and get through it, in as little time as possible and without, garbling on too much, all right? So, I touched on it in the dumbbell video, speaking of which. I touched on it in the dumbbell video as we talked about crossing the center line, okay? But, I didn't want to go into it in that video. So, as the title should probably say, is training your brain, all right? Or training for your brain. Now, all the obvious stuff we hear about, exercise releasing endorphins and stuff like that, as far as the hormonal side of it, that's not what I'm talking about it. So when we think about training our brain, let's think about, playing chess, reading books, doing even brain training games on your phone or whatever. But we can also train our brain with movement, all right? So this one here, wind. If you go back, you can see the video where I talk about this and what it means. This is one of the components in the training we do week in, week out here at Optimal Ability. And it's something I've done for years and years and years and years. Interesting that now studies are coming out because they've finally got around to it. They always seem to be a few years behind. About how movement helps to prevent the onset of, degenerative brain disorders like Alzheimer's and things like that, Parkinson's, so on and so forth. All right, so this is something we do often here, and I'm going to explain a little bit about that today. And I'm going to use a tool. It can be done with body weight, that's fine. Think dancers. Have you ever seen a professional? You might be able to go out and do a web search on this and prove me wrong, but show me a professional dancer that has ever had any kind of degenerative brain disease, and that's because, I'm not much of a dancer, but complex movement where they're crossing their body, their center line, they're using their arms and legs individually and at the same time in coordination, or doing different things at the same time, if you will. So I'm going to use these clubs, Indian clubs, very, very, very old school tool, which we use a lot of here, like maces and kettlebells, things like that. Hell, I've got two big rocks over there that we use. Anyway, so these are a good tool to demonstrate, what I'm talking about when it comes to complex movements. So one of the first things, really simple, we're crossing our center line. Very good for the neurology of the brain. It makes the brain work hard. It lights up areas of the brain that you're not necessarily used to using. Now we can put in spins, and if you look, my feet are actually coordinating with the movement as well, yeah? Also, then we've got, both doing at the same time. I'm crossing my left over my right, I'm crossing my right over my left. Or we can get really weird with the coordination, okay? And there's all sorts of funky things that you can do. Once you get good at it, you can, combine it with loads of different movements. So the point is, what we're doing is we're activating areas of the brain that we're not used to activating, because every part of one of those movements, every part of those movements requires an area of the brain to do so. I especially talk about what we do with our feet. Neurologically speaking, with the nerves, etc., and the fascia and the transferal of electric signals and stuff, but we'll not go into that. Again, medical science is just starting to catch up. Stuff I wrote about years ago. It is the furthest point from the body to the brain, so therefore those signals having to travel much further. Now, if we've got our feet in what I call foot coffins, is these big spongy shoes where they compress the toes, give you necrosis in the bottom of the foot, all that sort of stuff, our feet are completely switched off. This is why in my place we only train barefoot, only. They're allowed socks, but I encourage them to take their socks off. So that's kind of the basics of it. Doing, complex movements, especially with our arms, and then we can include, the feet. Think Tai Chi, which that, I suppose, kind of looks like, as well. The degenerative brain diseases are very much down to a lack of this kind of exercise, all right? So we're exercising for the health of our brain, all right, using complex movements. I believe there's a little body weight video, and I'll do something to, to maybe demonstrate a basic way to begin with that. Like I say, I do it with people with clubs. We'll just start with simple swings, all right? Then we can start throwing in lots of other stuff, okay? It's not as hard as it looks. It's just like anything else. You practice enough, you get good at it, all right? You don't even have to be a super nerd about it like me, all right? That's why super nerds like me exist, is to make it a bit clearer and a bit easier for, you know, other people to understand, because you're spending time. It's like, I always like to say, I'm kind of digressing here, but I always like to say, you know, if I want my car fixed, I'll go to a mechanic, because that's what they do, all right? Their job is just as important, all right? And one thing I am not is lucky, all right? Mechanics not lucky because they, you know, they were just born a mechanic. They learned how to do it, and this goes for everything, all right? So that's a little bit about training for the health of your brain, your mind, your neurological pathways in your body, learning new movements, relearning old basic movements, which big time in the feet. So yeah, before I ramble on more, I will leave it at that for you guys. I'll try to come up with maybe some simple examples that you can use to start doing this in your own life. It's also great for mobility and so on and so forth. If you have any questions, as always, please do. I work better